Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Ladies and gentlemen and people of the world, tonight I stand before you as a representative of a proud civilizational state called Bharat. Bharat. Some of you may know it as India, and the reason I am so proud is because today our great nation of 1.4 billion aspirations is taken on directly. Arguably the world's most powerful man, the self-proclaimed leader of the free world, and a man who believes bullying is power and coercion is diplomacy. And Bharat, that is India, is taking him on in the most resolute and dignified manner. Yes, I'm talking about US President Donald J. Trump. And yes, I'm talking about his unilateral and senseless imposition of 50% tariffs on India, a nation his own country called a comprehensive global and strategic partner of the US. Now, if you look at this from an Indian perspective, even 79 years after independence, this is a stubborn foreigner trying to preach to us to do a deal with him in his nation's interest because he's in trouble, backed by hard power. The last time I checked, this is 2025 and not 1757. And back then, we might not have had the unity and resolve to push back against the British East Indian Company. But today, India is certainly not a pushover. After all, we are the world's fourth largest economy. We are the largest democracy on the planet. We're the third largest military power in the world. But most importantly, we are nobody's adversary. We are a nation, a proud nation and an ancient civilization, Bharat, which is endeavoring to realize a dream of becoming a developed country, but through self-development, not on the basis of the evil of subjugation of the underdeveloped. India does not believe in expansionism. India doesn't believe in interference in other nations' democracies. India does not believe in virtue signaling over internal issues of other nations. India does not indulge in predatory trade practices. India does not fund any axis of evil or terrorist organizations. We are but a nation of dignity, respect, morals, values, and deep history. And yet tonight, a man goes around everywhere hankering, pleading, cajoling, arguing for a Nobel Peace Prize with badges of deceitful claims, lies of being a peacemaker, like he did again last night in America about the India-Pakistan war.
What's going on with you in India? And the hatred was tremendous. Now, this has been going on for a hell of a long time. I said, call me back tomorrow, but we're not going to do any deals with you, or you're going to put tariffs on you that was so high, I don't give a damn, your head's going to spin.
He doesn't know how to talk. He doesn't know how to conduct diplomacy. He doesn't know how to conduct himself. And he lies. This man thinks that strong-arming a nation like India, that has been aligned only to global good and humanity, is to be blamed for the carnage that ensues in Ukraine, while ignoring the root cause that Ukraine wanted to join a military grouping called NATO, pioneered, pushed, and encouraged by his own country, the United States of America, which is in a mess of its own making. Well, hypocrisy, thy name is the United States of America. This is not India's war. And for Trump, he would like you to believe it is Biden's war. But the reality is Donald Trump, for the rest of the world and for all reasonable people around the world, it is the USA's war. It is America's war. It is so ironic that India has to explain the fount of capitalism that is buying Russian oil and refining it for stabilization of global energy prices, and its own national interest is not to fund a war, but to fuel its own priorities. That is what the government of India is doing. Isn't that exactly what the United States has also always done? Isn't that what America is doing? Can America explain why it buys so much and has increased trade with Russia? With great hypocrisy. A so-called trade expert at the White House, Peter Navarro, says that India needs to act like a strategic partner to be treated as one. The same person gives $400 million to an irresponsible nuclear power to prime its American F-16s days ahead of them being used to defend terrorist dens and undermine Indian sovereignty through the continued illegal occupation of parts of Jammu and Kashmir. I repeat your words to you again, Mr. Navarro, this time with the right connotation. Let me say this to you, Mr. Navarro, that if the USA wants to be treated like a strategic partner by India, then the USA needs to start behaving like one. You are funding the place which was the sanctuary for Osama bin Laden. You are funding a terrorist state by doing crypto deals to benefit Trump's family, which may or may not benefit the President of the United States' own familial fortunes. You are hosting genocidal dictators for luncheons. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight the world watches how India is the only nation with a spine that can stand up to American strong-arm tactics. Tonight, even our adversaries are in admiration of our nationalist position, something you might not be able to locate in the glitter and pomp of the Oval Office amidst all the coercive gifts that you have proudly put on display. I would say, go out and touch the grass, Donald Trump. Touch the grass, Donald Trump. Gone are the days. You've taken on, you've bitten off more than you can chew, Donald Trump. Gone are the days when India was dismissed as a reluctant power. Today we shape the Indo-Pacific. We set the terms for the global South. Gone are the days when India was mocked for being out of the elite space club. Today, we successfully launched the world's most expensive Earth monitoring satellite, jointly made with NASA. We are now in the race to launch our own Bharat Antrix station, our space station. Gone are the days. Problem with Donald Trump, he doesn't know the India he's dealing with. He doesn't know the India he's dealing with. We are far more developed in many areas of technology than America. Our economy is far more stable and resilient than the crippling and crippled, debt-ridden US economy. Gone are the days when the world threatened us with sanctions on nuclear weapons. Today, India is the only successful global superpower that defeated a nuclear adversary with impunity, with a zero-tolerance policy to nuclear blackmail. We know how to deal with China. We battle them every day, and we push them back. You have Canada and Mexico as neighbors. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if America had China as its neighbor. You see the way already, the obsequious way in which Trump is behaving with Putin. Imagine how he would deal with Xi Jinping then. Maybe he would garland him once every day. Gone are the days, ladies and gentlemen, when India was only a market for foreign tech. Today, we are the creators of AI, quantum computing, and the world's fastest digital payments revolution. In fact, techies in America are leaving America because the situation is hopeless and coming back to India to build companies and work here. Because the American economy, American society is in a horrible shape. Today, we are building for billions while others still debate pilot projects. Gone are the days when India imported every weapon. Today, we design, test, and export fighter jets, aircraft carriers, missile defense system. Our tricolor flies on machines made in India. Gone are the days when we were called a fragile five nation. Today we are on the track. As Narendra Modi said in the US Congress, we are on track to become the third largest economy of the world by 2028. Perhaps even before your term ends, Donald Trump. You made such a mistake. You know nothing about economics, geopolitics, or India's stature and position and future. Gone are the days when India was sidelined at climate summits. Today, people look down at climate summits on the United States of America, and the world looks to India's solar alliance, green hydrogen vision, energy transition roadmaps as the blueprint for the world's future. So gone are the days when India's voice was ignored at the UN. Today, it is India leading the call for UN reformation. Gone are the days when India was breaking into Western headlines as a depiction of a land of poverty, exotica, a land of famine and floods, which was also a wrong stereotype. Or sitcoms as late as the late 90s and early 2000s, reducing India to an elephant and dysfunctional toilets or a curry-colored land where the cultish workforce worships a clueless. Just look around what the world is saying today. Just look around what the world is saying today. Look at these headlines. Today, if you're watching this in India, let me tell you, feel proud. The whole world is cheering you. People who were cynical of India are today cheering us. Financial Times, London. India holds firm as Donald Trump's punitive tariffs loom. Another headline, Narendra Modi ready to pay a heavy price as India seeks to resist Trump's tariffs. Nobody is fighting Trump like India is. Nobody is. And you know what? When India wins vis-a-vis Trump, not whether, when Narendra Modi wins and defeats Trump's bullying, when India defeats the USA, imagine what the headlines will be. Trump's 25% India tariffs could backfire and strengthen China-India ties. The whole world is looking. The German press even reported Trump calls, but Modi doesn't answer. I don't know whether Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, ignored 4 desperate calls from Donald Trump for a deal, or whether the reason for that, or whether that was the reason why Trump withdrew his trade delegation because of an ego issue which was supposed to visit 2 days ago. What I know is this, that today the world stands in awe of India's decisive stand. That is how we deal with a bully. And the only country in the whole world which knows how to deal with a bully is Bharat, my country, India. We play by the rules, we're ready to pay the top price and follow the proper channels of communication. As you can see the sequence of events, ladies and gentlemen, within 24 hours of Trump's tariff imposition, Brazilian President Lula da Silva dialed Narendra Modi to affirm commitment to defend multilateralism to address challenges of the current situation. Immediately the next day, our national security advisor met Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Prime Minister Modi and Vladimir Putin had a phone call. The Russian president confirmed his India visit. Prime Minister Modi confirmed his visit to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization on the same day. The date was August 7th. Within 24 hours of US pressure on Russian oil imports, we made it clear we don't respond to bullies. Since then, the Chinese Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, visited India and called on Prime Minister Modi, had detailed discussions with National Security Advisor Ajit Doval on the India-China boundary question. Then India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar went to Moscow, met Vladimir Putin for just 2 weeks after our National Security Advisor did the same. Russian delegations are in India every day. Russia announced an additional 5% discount to India for purchases of Russian oil. Then Macron from France dialed Prime Minister Modi assuring strengthening of the partnership, support towards the EU-India FTA. Germany has said that the EU-India FTA will be sealed by the year end. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is embarking for Japan on a bilateral visit where we will hold discussions with a solid ally like a partner. And of course, by this Sunday, we will see President Vladimir Putin of Russia, Xi Jinping from China, and Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, under one roof in Tianjin for the SCO. Now imagine all of this on one side. All of this on one side. Strong global leaders, strong economies, and ancient civilizations. Remember, ancient civilizations, unlike America, which does not have a significant, even a medieval history. You know, interestingly, the USA is a country without a medieval history. They say they're a modern state, yes, but where is their civilization? Where are their thousands of years of history? Where are their ancient tests on economics, science? What is American culture but if not pop culture? So ancient civilizations with deep history come together. All Trump is to do in the past, what he has been able to do, is perhaps he will get up tomorrow morning and put out another post on Truth Social. Now he'll attack Venezuela, Madagascar next. I want you to listen to the soundbite of Prime Minister Modi from yesterday now. And that will tell you what is in his mind exactly. Please listen to this short soundbite.
मेरी स्वदेशी की व्याख्या बहुत सिंपल है। पैसा किसका लगता है उसे मुझे कोई लेना देना नहीं है। वो डॉलर है, पाउंड है, मुझे कोई लेना देना नहीं है। जो प्रोडक्शन होगा उसमें महक मेरी देश की मिट्टी की होगी, मेरी भारत मां की होगी।
Complete clarity. I don't care, Narendra Modi says, where you invest from, in which currency. But you will make in India, you will produce in India. There is complete clarity with which the Indian leadership is thinking. USA is not the only export destination in the world. Someone has to tell Trump this. Modi isn't thinking of how he can compromise with Trump. I can tell you he will not compromise with Trump. Anybody who's watched Narendra Modi knows that he will do anything, he will push back with all his strength. Instead, he's planning to send an outreach program to 40 nations to boost India's textile sector, including UK, Japan, South Korea. The whole world wants to trade with India. We're an ancient trading civilization. Not with a threat, but with pride in our products, with humility, with a business-like approach, while the world attempts to decode the loud-mouthed Trump administration. It's embarrassing to have such a loud mouth as President of the USA. People are laughing behind Trump's back every day. But they've slowly realized that the storm in the silence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The silence is indeed deafening, but let me help out here. You see, what Prime Minister Narendra Modi won't tell you, Mr. Donald Trump, but I will say is this. India is not a stranger to your art of the deal. Problem with Donald Trump thinks he invented the idea of the deal. He's just a marketing man. Trump is a marketing man. That's what he is. He's a some kind of a fiction television, reality TV anchor who's become president of the USA. There's no difference. You know, the common thing between Zelensky and Trump is this. Both are reality TV and one is comedy, circuit television actors. And for all intents and purposes, we might have written the book on the deal. After all, we were 30% of global GDP in the 17th century. We didn't do that by imposing tariffs. We know what trade looks like even before America was conceived. And so today, when we stand up to a bully, it is not an extraordinary feat or marvel. It is the baselines on which our nation won its independence in 1947. We are nobody's lackey, proxy, or counterweight. We are the Republic of India. With the largest population in the world, 1.4 plus billion Indians. And if 34 crore Indians in 1947, 340 million Indians defeated the then mighty British Empire with non-violence. An empire which was so arrogant, they would say in London, the sun will never set on us. Who defeated the British Empire? Who gave the biggest defeat to the British Empire? Who destroyed the British Empire? Which civilization destroyed the British Empire? It was India. So India can surely weather 3.5 years of Trump's dynasty. Because Mr. American President, empires rise and fall, dynasties are crowned and deposed, but civilizations are built to last. So in your words, thank you, Donald Trump. I hope this reaches you. Someone puts it in your head. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Well, we're negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. You know, they have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. It's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade.
The unfairly targeted 25% tariff against India has come into effect. Trump targeted Brazil.
Vocês pensam, eu não vou ligar para o tampa comercial não, porque não quer falar. Mas pode ficar certo, Marina. Vou ligar para ele, vou ligar para o Xi Jinping, vou ligar para o primeiro-ministro Modi, vou ligar. Eu não vou ligar para o Putin, porque o Putin não está podendo viajar. Mas vou ligar para muitos presidentes, eu quero ver.
Trump targeted China.
They have to give us magnets. If they don't give us magnets, then we have to charge them 200% tariff or something.
Trump targeted BRICS.
They have to pay 10% if they're in BRICS. Because BRICS was set up to hurt us. BRICS was set up to degenerate our dollar and take our dollar as the standard, take it off as the standard. And that's okay if they want to play that game, but I can play that game too. So anybody that's in BRICS is getting a 10% charge.
And the United States president tried hard to get an upper hand against Russia through sanctions.
If I can save that by doing sanctions or by just being me, or by using a very strong tariff system that's very costly to Russia.
And yet, he has succeeded in none. Donald Trump has tried hard to bully via false claims and tariff tantrums, but India has pushed back. Losing the plot, the US president tried to make Russian oil a point of contention. But Trump has no words for the European Union, which is buying from America.
If you have a problem buying oil from India, oil or refined products, don't buy it. Nobody forced you to buy it. But Europe buys, America buys. So you don't like it, don't buy it.
The new India does not believe in getting bullied. It fights back.
कुछ लोग हैं जो भारत के का विकास जितनी तेजी के साथ हो रहा है उन्हें रास नहीं आ रहा है, उन्हें अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है। सबके बास तो हम हैं। भारत कैसे इतनी तेजी के साथ बढ़ रहा है?
Today's India believes in a multipolar world.
We will continue to explore all markets for our energy needs.
The United States has imposed tariffs of up to 50% on India and even threatened for more. China firmly opposes it. In the face of such acts, silence or compromise only emboldens the bully. China will firmly stand with India.
And we stand tall amidst the economic bullying.
Economy is growing, our economy is strong, and our economy is resilient. And we will definitely look at other areas, other regions, other countries and continents.
While Trump would like to believe, his tariff tyranny is not a break in India's growth story. At most, it's a small speed breaker.
Okay, I have with us tonight a brilliant panel. We have Madhav Nalapat, Vice Chairman of the Manipal Research Advanced Group. We have Einar Tangen from Beijing, political and economic expert. We have with us Robert Moran, a political strategist and a partner at the Brunswick Group. We have William Buiter, Chief Economist at Citi and EBRD member, former President and Professor of Economics, joining us from New York. Mr. Buiter, if I can start with you right now. I mean, it is quite apparent to everyone that we have made a choice as a nation. India has made a choice. We were being used as a pivot to push Russia, to push a deal on Ukraine. But we've hardened our position, and being a democracy, when a very popularly elected leader like Narendra Modi does that, he's unlikely to pull back. So what, in your view, will happen next on this issue?
Yeah. Remember that 50% tariff is a 25% reciprocal tariff, which is imposed because, in the view of the US, India is protectionist and runs a trade surplus in merchandise trade, and the other 25% is indeed a so-called secondary tariff imposed to stop or discourage India's imports from Russia. So they're quite different. The Russia-related tariff is totally geopolitical. It uses trade as a weapon to influence the outcome of the war in Ukraine. And I think this will only be taken off if there's either a very unexpected outbreak of peace in the Ukraine, or if India somehow is convinced, unlikely in my view, to cease or start seriously diminish its import of Russian crude oil. The other 25%, which is still higher than the tariffs imposed on most of the rest of the world, which is 15% for the EU and Japan, and 10% only for the UK, that can only be addressed, I think, by India reducing its barriers on imports, both tariffs, which for some agricultural goods are 64% or more, or non-tariff barriers to trade that are quotas and other regulatory restrictions. I personally view an early resolution of this issue as very unlikely. It's deplorable. The only good news is that the tariffs are only on Indian exports to the US of sort of physical goods. Service exports to the US are not affected. And of the just under 90 billion goods exports to the US, 45% is not affected by this tariff. So there is still some unrestricted trade, even though the sectors, often labor-intensive ones, that are affected by the 50% tariff will be hard hit and have to find other markets elsewhere in the world, which will happen, which will cost time and will involve pain.
Yeah, I think track 3, track 4 engagement is continuing with America, but Madhav, do you see any chance, after what the Prime Minister has said in his Independence Day speech, that we will ever open up any of those sections of our economy that America is pushing so hard for?
I see absolutely no chance at all, Arnab. The reality is he is pushing for imports that can completely starve millions of Indian farmers and that can completely destroy the Indian dairy industry. They have excess grain, they have excess milk. Well, given their obesity problem, they need to eat less, that's all. So the reality situation is, here is a man who's telling, you people who are overweight, I mean, I'm not going to define Donald Trump, but, and you're telling somebody who is on the brink of starvation, I mean, that you cut back a little more. It makes no sense. And I can tell you, Arnab, this is not going to hurt very much. Less than 0.5% of GDP, much less, is going to be hurt in these tariffs. And secondly, I just want to add one more point. I think Trump has entered fantasy land. And when you're President of the United States, you have Hail to the Chief, like God Save the King in the UK, and you have a huge flight, I mean, aircraft taking you everywhere, of course, now gifted by the state of Qatar. So you begin to believe that you're an emperor and that you control other people. I mean, even the emperors in the past, I think, were a little more modest in the kind of control they exercise. So I'd like to point out what Trump is doing defies belief, except to say that his main target is the United States itself.
You see, I was always, you're right.
US.
Yes. No, I was always, very uncomfortable with this idea that America wants to use India as a counterweight to China, because we are too large a country to be seen in terms of being a counterweight to China. We have our own interests to take care of. But if I can bring in Mr. Moran, because you're a political strategist, Mr. Moran, I'm sure you'll agree with me that the consequences of these actions are more than economic. Somewhere there's a growing feeling in India that America has been trying to double time a large country like India, and this will have an impact on the overall geopolitical equations, the trust factor, Quad, for example. It'll have a lot of impact on these things. The feeling in India is you can't depend on America. Okay, we may someday work it out with them, can start doing business again with them, but you can never lean on them. We can not even allow them to lean on us. That's the sense that we are getting here. What's your view, Mr. Moran?
So while I'm skeptical of the ability of America to build a managed trade regime, I actually am optimistic about U.S.-India relations. But I think there are three things that are going on here, and I think you laid most of them out in your intro. The first is that the Trump administration is attempting to reset the terms of trade globally. Yes. And they're attempting to use tariffs and the threat of tariffs to do that. And a very traditional Trump negotiating tactic is to start out negotiations very hard and then probe and then find a deal. So that's one. They're trying to reset the terms of trade. That would include India, and that's what you see here. The second, as another guest pointed out, is they're trying to pressure India on Russian oil purchases. So that's the second goal. But they have a third geopolitical goal, which is to develop and build the relationship with India relative to China, which is one of their top geopolitical concerns. So you have three interlocking issues here that I think we're talking about, and it's messy. But a lot of what you're seeing here is very traditional Trump negotiation tactics, where he starts out hard and then begins to work with countries going back and forth. And you see this with some of our larger trading partners in the US and Canada. But I would say, look, it is hard to redo the terms of trade after trade has developed organically between two nations for a very long time. And I think that's where a lot of the fear and friction is right now.
Yes, Mr. Moran, just a small observation before I go to Adele and then I go to Einar, is that I get a feeling that a lot of countries around the world who are rooting for India and Narendra Modi silently right now, which includes the EU, which has compromised reluctantly, which includes Japan, which has compromised reluctantly, which includes even the United Kingdom. I mean, I may be simplistic in this view, but many people across the world, the way they are writing is almost as if they wish their own countries or nations had done exactly what India has done, which is stared the US administration back. You get that view, Mr. Moran?
Well, I think it's complicated. So let's look at the different countries. So we know, for example, that Canada did push back. We know that Brazil has. We know that the UK sought to ink a deal really quickly. So did Japan. So I think it's complicated. I think over time, as more bilateral trade deals are negotiated, we'll start to see the outlines of this. Each country is trying to negotiate what is in their best interests. And so I think over time, as you see more bilaterals negotiated, countries will start to develop more nuanced strategies. But I think this is still very early in this. And this is the messy part about negotiating bilaterally all of these trade deals. It's a lot for any one administration to handle.
Yeah, I think people are uncomfortable anyway. Nobody is comfortable with Trump's approach. May I bring in Adele, please?
That's the point. But that's the point.
That's the point.
He wants them to be uncomfortable. That's why he's negotiating this way. But I think everybody knows that too. They know that this is his strategy, and he always negotiates this way. His demeanor and strategy surprises no one. It does not surprise any international actors. They know this about him. The question is, what is the deal space in the end? That's the question.
No, I get your point. Yeah, but you know, India is upset. We're going to stand back. Adele, you were saying something here. Yeah, Adele.
I think it's great. I'm gonna harken back to something I said during the last time I was on the show, that they know what they're getting with Trump, and that's a beautiful thing. You know, you're knowing what to expect, and that gives them the ability to, you know, preemptively prepare for their response. And I think that this is a temporary policy. It's not permanent. It's a negotiation tactic. And frankly, I have to say, if you put yourself in the same shoes and you see what's been happening to your nation, it's never comfortable. It's never pretty. It's very ugly, of course, at the end of the day for the end users, but it's a temporary reprieve. I think that people are always, this is a form of negotiation and tactics, a strong arm tactic, of course. But I think what's going on is this bargaining chip at the end of the day is going to be beneficial for India and Trump, the US. I think Freudian slip there. What you're going to end up seeing is that Prime Minister Modi has already done, I think, $12 billion in income tax, I think, cuts. I think he's helped in terms of cutting the losses in some other way to help everyday Indian people in his nation to not be able to feel the effects of this too hard. He's going to be negotiating FTAs, foreign trade agreements, right, with Brazil.
Yeah, but Adele, what is happening here is, I don't want to preempt what anyone's saying. I'd like to welcome Ekaterina from Moscow. She's an international journalist from Moscow. I'll just come to you, ma'am, in a minute. But Einar, what is happening here is something more interesting. Because you are dealing with some countries, many countries are ancient civilizations. And I now like to talk about Japan as well. You see,
Sure.
Japan as well. I think Trump tried to humiliate Japan. You know, he imposed 15%, earlier set at 25%. He said 90% of investment profits will remain in the US. Japan will immediately increase imports of American rice by 75%. You know, and agree to additional purchase of American defense equipment, billions of dollars. May work for the short term. I don't know, but I have a feeling there's going to be a major rebalancing in the medium term, not even the long term. Einar, in the context of the SCO summit happening in China, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, what I don't understand is the Donald Trump you see today is no different than the Donald Trump that you saw 8 years ago. He's the same person, as his supporters have pointed out. Trump is Trump. So this idea that this six-time bankrupt, tax cheat, flounderer, whatever, is somehow to be taken seriously, I think is wrong. I think the wrong move was to trust him in the first place. I mean, look at Mexico, look at Canada. He created the big, beautiful bill in his first term. He said it was the most beautiful thing and the greatest between Mexico and Canada. He forced them, once again, using economic threats, to sign on to an agreement that 4 years later he decides is not good enough and he breaks. So this is not somebody you can trust. Now, I really do think that the major issue here is which way India goes. Today, Narendra Modi was very clear. He talked about self-reliance. I think there's another path. Obviously, Donald Trump has made it very clear that he's afraid of BRICS. You don't start belittling something and threatening it because you think it doesn't matter. I heard all the quotes in the beginning of your show. He's concerned. I think that India has a role in leading BRICS towards a more active stance. And I mean, in this instance, getting the 10 countries together, which would dwarf the United States. And I mean by it's 4 times more manufacturing. It's the majority of people, land, resources, 40% of the GDP. And they should go and say, look, Trump, you should come and meet with us, humiliate him a little bit, and tell him to knock it off, or this consortium will make sure that he has a very, very difficult time. And as usual, Trump will chicken out. That's his name. It's a nickname. And he's been true to it all along. He only respects countries that push back. India is pushing back, but it is an asymmetrical war at the end. U.S. is a bigger bully, and it's going to be very, very difficult for him to do it. Now, this idea that we should accept it and it's just part of the game, I understand that that's very much of Wall Street. I was an investment banker at one time, and I used to hear this kind of stuff, but it's nonsense. Right? There's no reason for countries to surrender their sovereignty to a bully and pretend that somehow that's all in a day's work. Right? These are proud countries. You pointed it out. These are civilizations. These are not countries that were made up of a bunch of people who moved to another place, chased out the indigenous, and then proceeded to rape, rob, and ruin. So keep that in mind. There are 2 paths that can be taken. Hopefully, India will choose the right one.
Well, the whole world is looking at what steps India will take. I'm also interested in knowing, Ekaterina, from you in Moscow, what line Putin will take, because the war is not ending. Neither is Ukraine agreeing to any territorial concessions. So,
yes, of course.
Please.
War issue is the most important now, and talking about this situation with the tariffs, I can say that in Russia not many people are following it right now because it's not directly related to Russia, but it is related to war. And in this case, of course, people are following the events, and those people who are engaged in politics, who follow the politics, they try to understand what's going on between Russia and India and the US and China, because we know that the China is like somehow, shall I put it? Trump sees it as somehow a rival country, economical rival. That's why his primarily goal was not to let China and Russia and India get together so that their economy would be reinforced. And I think that this situation with tariffs, the rise of the tariffs, it just showed us that he was somehow wrong because his goal is not achieved. He wanted to see weaker China, weaker Russia, and now the situation with tariffs will lead to closer ties between Russia and China. And of course, this is not what he wants. So it looks like not a win for him. I mean, the whole situation for Trump. And as for Moscow, of course, people think, many people see the situation as a choice that India should make, a choice between the US and Russia. Of course, this is like a simplified view, but this is how it's perceived. And now people think that India has made its choice, which was to go on with oil purchase and get the tariffs and stop the purchase of this discounted crude.
Yeah, Ekaterina, I think India has made a choice. And I'd like to use this opportunity to tell you why I think so. Four reasons. One, Prime Minister Modi did not visit Washington when Trump called him and asked him to do so. He refused to visit Washington. Secondly, in his Independence Day speech, Prime Minister said Modi is standing like a wall against any harmful policy which may compromise our farmers, fishermen, or our cattle rearers. We will never accept any compromise on these issues. So then the visit to the SCO is very important. I think even William Boucher will accept here that Modi's decision to visit China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and amidst talks of a trilateral with Russia and China and India is a very, very important global event coming up in a few days. Mr. Boucher?
No, indeed. As I said, a lot of this trade issue is about geopolitics, about geostrategic realignments. Trump's opposition to the BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, it's reflected, it's a political issue, but it's reflected in the tariffs imposed on all of them. And this is not going to change. I do not expect anything spectacular from the meetings in India, China, and the other 20 countries, because there's simply too much that divides them to make a big leap, even into deepening trade relations.
Why?
India protects its farmers against all imports, not just imports from America. Right? So India's protectionism will be an issue, also with the other countries outside the West, so to speak, that they're trying to get closer to. Yes, there will be some reorientation of trade, but nothing significant is likely to happen.
You agree with that assessment? I think it could be symbolic and yet significant. Madhav?
Frankly, Arnab, he's talking absolutely a reverse of truth. What he's saying, in effect, is forget the global south. Forget the fact that the global south is growing fast. Forget the fact that India's rate of growth is 5 times that of the United States. And guess what, Arnab? These particular so-called Trump tariffs are going to result in reforms which are going to estimated to grow the Indian economy by another 2-3% at least. So we lose less than 0.5% and we grow 2-3% once the reforms kick in. And the Prime Minister is accelerating those reforms, making sure that India becomes more competitive, making sure that Indian companies become more competitive, and he's doing a lot on taxes, regulations, governance, all these issues. I mean, 1991, India was the crisis. India got out of it. And now Trump is trying to throw us into a crisis.
Also, I think, sorry to interrupt you, Madhav, but I think Mr. Moran, where Trump has made a mistake, he's read all the three individuals concerned wrong. Four, in fact, if I include Mr. Lula. But he's read Putin wrong, because Putin didn't make a single concession when he met him in Alaska, hardened his stand and said, see you in Moscow next time. He's read Xi Jinping wrong, because he thought the threat of sanctions of 135% could intimidate him, then he had to roll it back. But he's also read India wrong, which our GDP growth figure projections have grown since the tariffs. We are too diversified an economy. So do you think it's a possibility, Mr. Moran, that because he doesn't go into detail, he's overstated his case or he's been advised wrong? Mr. Moran?
I think that in reality, the administration, when it comes to trade, has a very transactional approach, which makes sense because he's a business person. What you've referenced and other guests have referenced is soft power. And it does not appear that the administration values soft power. It appears that they are transactional in nature. They assume that nation states will pursue their interests no matter what. And so in their view, soft power is probably less relevant or irrelevant. But many of the things that some of your guests have stated are about soft power, about prestige, about self-image, etc. And, rightly or wrongly, I don't think his team believes in soft power. And I think this is an issue. But the bigger issue is there's three things going on, and they're somewhat at odds. The administration is trying to reset the terms of trade. That's not easy. They're doing it in a bilateral way across many nations at once. The second thing is they're trying to pressure India on oil relative to Russia, which you've noted. And then the third is they're trying to develop India as a counterbalance to China. Those three are a very difficult puzzle to put together. And I think that's why we're all talking about this right now.
Absolutely. Adele?
Thank you for that. I actually disagree. I think that this is being misread as hard power. President Trump has absolutely been using soft power in both his terms. In fact, I'd say that these tariffs and negotiations are soft power through hard power. I think what everyone's missing here is that President Trump has done this as a way to entice Prime Minister Modi back to the table to speak to him. Prime Minister Modi has essentially been ignoring him since the whole Pakistan-India rift. And President Trump negotiating the way that he did. And he's using this as a way to get his attention again, try to bring him back. I happen to also not believe that the fact that Prime Minister Modi has gone ahead, India has gone ahead and decided to purchase Russian oil is disconnecting itself from the US-India relationship. Right now it's been damaged, but I don't think that it's permanent damage. If you look at it, look at the number of Indians who are in America. You can't just cut off a relationship like that. Russia doesn't have the same number as Indians as America does. That's a fact. And I don't think that it'll ever come close to having, and it's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, look at how vastly Indian Americans have contributed to America's workforce and to the technology and to a growing, middle class population, which is strategically important in terms of getting the votes and moving votes across states. It's an American domestic
No, you're not
policy.
suggesting that Trump will deport Satya Nadella one day to teach a lesson to India, is it? No, you can't do that.
I don't think so. I really don't believe he'll do that. It's funny though. But just look at it. The number of tech CEOs, you just pointed it out yourself, right? The US-India relationship, no matter how this may be perceived as obviously pushing India more towards BRICS, absolutely. What this is also doing though is this is not a cutting of ties between US and India. All relationships go through ebbs and flows, ups and downs, right?
I agree. I agree. I agree. I'm a realist there, Adele. But I'm saying that this philosophy that everything is trade. See, we are also looking at it in terms of trade. But I think today let me put this to Einar. You can't transact without having a geopolitical impact. It's all linked, isn't it, Einar? Things are linked. Trade and politics are linked.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, but I take a little umbrage at what Adele is saying. I mean, from what I could figure out, she's saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just one of those things." Well, if India had interfered in Donald Trump's election, if they had gone to Canada and sponsored a color revolution, if they insisted that they had settled the American Civil War. And if they were doing deals with a country that was, basically at odds with India, I don't think she would be saying, tut tut, you'll get over it.
Yeah.
Look, the United States is no longer reliable. You know that now. The question is, how do you deal with it? It's not going to go away. It comes back to the choices that you have. You can either, I don't understand this talk about soft power. What I was talking about was very much hard power. That is getting these nations together, going to Donald Trump and saying, knock it off. It's not about anything. I mean, quite frankly, if the world were to say to Donald Trump, do whatever tariff you want, doesn't matter, but it has to be uniform. You want 15% across the board? Fine. 20%. It's fine. Your people will pay for it. The rest of the world will go on because the United States still has to import 1/4 of everything that it buys.
Yep.
That's fine. You're not imposing anything. But this idea that he can set countries off against each other, this is nonsense. This is an old colonial game.
I think
India, of all nations, is not going to play it.
No, we won't. I don't think we will. I don't think Russia will. I don't think China will. So we are moving towards very interesting times. This has been a very interesting exchange. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As of now, the news here that I can share with you is everyone's feeling very confident and saying, bring it on, Trump. I'll see you soon. Good night and goodbye.
Time for a quick breather. Arnab will be right back with the debate.